Hey guys and girls, hope you're all well. Bored now, back with Rachel McDonald. And now that we're finally at the end of Stranger Things 4, both volumes have come out and the talking can start. The talking really hasn't stopped for the past month and so, which is one of the exciting things about Stranger Things as a show, because it just gets people talking, and it really feels like an event, which very rarely happens nowadays. Is going to be our overview of the season, and some particular focus on Volume 2, because Rachel wasn't on for those reviews. So Rachel's going to give some thoughts on Volume 2 and of the season overall. It's obviously a bit of a weird one because of it being split up like that, and I think watching Volume 2, I can understand a little bit just because it felt like a two-part finale, and it almost, watching it just felt like two sort of movies in a way, like split up. What do you think of season 4?
So I do think season 4 overall definitely lifted the game after season 3. Anyone who's been watching our reviews knows that I am not a fan of season 3. This has been a talking point between me and Keith.
It
But
really
for
has.
me, yeah, after season 3, I was kind of done with the show. Like it had just gone to a place that I just wasn't interested in anymore. So season 4 for me felt like a little bit more, not so much return to form, but more just that the writers had gotten their act together. I loved so many of the dynamics this season. It gave me dynamics I never knew I needed, but I desperately love now. Like I've mentioned, Joyce and Murray were a really surprising one, but I
Very
absolutely
surprising.
loved that dynamic. Robin and Nancy was another one that I loved. Steve and Eddie, those four as a quartet, the Fruity Four, everyone's calling them. I think they were a great dynamic, you know. So a lot of new stuff this season that I really loved. I thought the characterization this season was really strong, especially, well, for most characters. There are a few that I think did fall by the wayside, which we can get into. But I think, and we've talked about this before, unfortunately, when you have a cast that's this big, not every character is going to receive like a full proper character arc. And I think sometimes that's okay. You know, I don't think that every season, every character has to be going through some sort of deep, you know, emotional arc. Some seasons are focused more on some characters than others. And I think this season there were just a few like Mike and Will, you know, that got a little bit shunted to the side. And maybe
I think maybe because their plot was the lesser of the four sort of plots. I think because I thought there was some good stuff in their plot, but yeah, it definitely felt like lowest down on the list of like sort of priorities. That plot sort of thing.
So volume 1, I absolutely loved. Now, volume 2, I did have some issues with, and we are going to get into this as we talk more about spoilers and things. For me, it felt, first of all, I'm not, like, I understand what you're saying about the two final episodes feeling like two long hour, like, movies, but for me, I actually think it would have been better if they just dropped the whole season in one go. It felt like they really only pushed the second half back so that they could do all of this promotion for it and hype everyone up. And a lot of stuff didn't get followed through on, which again we'll talk about when we start talking about volume 2. But I
actually have another theory of why they did it. Obviously, part of what you said is right, but I think you just have to accept that that's, you know, the nature of commercialized
unfortunately
shows.
yes.
But I actually have another reason why I think they did it. I think they did it so that the end of the season wasn't spoiled straight away, because I think naturally if they dropped the whole thing in one, you know the way the internet worked. I mean, people would have binged it maybe in one day or something, and spoilers, because I mean, I actually had the Eddie thing spoiled on the internet, just by mistake. Because I'd watched like episode 8 one day, and then I was going to watch episode 9 the next day, and I saw, like, just through a title of a YouTube video. I think that might be one reason. Yeah.
And I guess because so much went down in the finale that, yeah, you're right, that they probably didn't want it getting out and leaking like what actually happened. So that's actually a really good point. And it makes me feel a little bit better about like the splitting up of the two parts. I think you're right. I think episode 8 was definitely a setup episode. Like not a lot happened in there. That was just kind of everyone moving all the pieces around on the board to get everything into place for the finale. And then the finale itself, I mean, look, there was a lot of good there, and we can talk about a lot of the acting was spectacular in the finale. Sadie Sink, give that girl all the awards. She was so good in that final episode, and you know, lots of good action set pieces. You know, of course, we have Eddie's guitar solo, which we'll talk about more soon.
Yeah,
There was a
that was
lot of
great,
good in the finale. There was a lot of fun. Like when I was watching it, I was definitely having a good time, but I found that when I stopped the finale, when it was over and we turned it off, I sat there for a few minutes with Stephen and I was like, I don't feel satisfied. And it took me a while to figure out why. I'm still trying to figure out what it was about the finale that didn't satisfy me. But I think some of it has to do with things from the first volume 1 that I don't think were resolved in volume 2, or rather volume 2 making some stuff from not from season 1, from volume 1 look like, well, what was the point of putting that in there? Because it was not then followed through. So there was some stuff that I was like, well, we could have spent more time with other characters rather than having all this built up. So for me, volume 2 was good in some parts.
It still might be followed up because it's not the end of the show yet.
That's
still
true.
Another season. So.
That's true. So, well, just to elaborate on that, we'll start getting into like some decent stuff. So, Elle's whole storyline in volume 1 about being bullied at school and her outburst with Angela, like that was literally forgotten about for the rest of the season. Like I don't understand, unless they're going to follow it up in season 5, what was the point of making Elle so miserable in the beginning of volume 1? Like what was the point of having her be bullied? And I think I'll let you speak in a sec, but I think I've talked about this before, but I just wanted to say Elle's violence is a running theme with her. She's a violent person, which makes sense. But I really thought that this season was going to like maybe explore that a bit, because this is the first time she's used violence outside of like a traumatizing situation, or you know, rather an extreme situation, and that's not her powers. So I was like, are we going to follow up on Elle being a little violent?
A similar point to what you're making now, because those scenes were effective, so I can see why they had them in there, but it was just very awkward to watch, wasn't it? Very cringe, and I think because obviously we care so much about Elle, the character and stuff, so it was very hard to watch. So I guess I don't really have a problem, just because I wanted them to move on from that stuff as quickly as possible. Theme with what they were doing this season, because I think you can draw a parallel between that stuff, like that very real world stuff, with the idea of her powers and what the limit of her powers should be, and her trying to get her powers under control. And I also think there's a parallel to it, because in a way you say they didn't deal with it. I think they did deal with it in the institution, where for so many years Elle believed then she was responsible for those deaths. So I think the theme of the bullying but also her trying to control her powers, and obviously what is sort of too much, and her being violent, as you say, I think that's obviously what we see in the first early episodes. That's a literal, real world interpretation, but I think it's sort of linked to what they're doing with her in the past, and then her at the end of the season, where it's sort of exploring the limits of her powers, and is her powers a good thing? And as I said previously, can she live in the real world? Is that possible? I think that was, and obviously one of the big things by the end was, which I think was a relief, just because how much we're attached to Elle, but I am actually relieved then they revealed then it wasn't her fault, that opening 8 minutes, and believing
Yeah.
for a while then she did actually kill them, even though you say
Yeah.
circumstance and what have you, then yeah, that's quite a tough one maybe to come back from. Angela was just maybe a setup for some of that stuff and the journey that Elle was going to go on this season. Like, it wasn't actually that important. Like, I don't think you really to have a resolution to it. What more you can do with a plot like that? I mean, they could revisit it next season, maybe.
Put in, and now it's never going to get revisited again. It literally didn't go anywhere. And I get what you're saying with it mirroring a little bit like what happened to her when she was in the Hawkins lab, and her whole "I must be a monster. Am I a monster? Am I the good guy?" But they didn't really, I don't know, they didn't get deep enough into it for me. Like, I feel like maybe if they'd had a scene where Joyce had found out what she'd done, and Joyce could have taken her aside and said, I understand that this has always been your response, but you can't act like this. Like, I feel sometimes with Elle's character, they're so intent on keeping her as like the superhero and her whole thing with Hawkins Labs and everything, that they forget that she's also just a teenage girl, and sometimes you need to give her a teenage or like a young person storyline. I just feel that they're missing an opportunity to explore her character outside of being a superhero and outside of Hawkins Labs. This could have been such a great opportunity to have someone sit down and say to Elle, look, this isn't the way it's done. You can't just be violent as a reaction.
That point through the show, like through the storytelling and obviously that scene when she hits her with the even though we were like, yeah, she probably had that coming. It's it is one of those. It's like, oh my god, yeah, that's quite extreme. Effective part of the drama, but we both said then we'll be happy as soon as they move on from this. So I guess that's sort of the way I look. Then really I was more interested in the sort of sci-fi Stranger Things exploring.
Oh, definitely. But again, this is kind of my point. Stuff. Like, we're also ready to move on from this. Why was it in there in the first place? Why? And another thing is like okay, so Mike's whole speech, which we'll definitely get back to because there is a whole thing to be unpacked there. But Mike's whole thing out of the blue suddenly where he's all like, oh, I'm afraid she doesn't need me anymore. Like, how much better would it have worked if Mike had arrived in California and instead of being a bully target, Elle had made all these new friends? And suddenly he's like, well, maybe she doesn't need me anymore. Like, I feel like maybe that would have emphasized Mike's feelings of Elle not needing him if he'd come and she'd actually managed to thrive without him or something. Like,
looking for a different show than Stranger Things is. It's almost like you're looking for maybe a Veronica Mars style show, and it's not a Veronica Mars style show.
Well, not necessarily. I just think that this whole thing with Elle being bullied, it didn't go anywhere. So why put it in? Why not just devote more time to other characters or different storylines? Like, we could have instead had a whole week with Mike visiting Elle and Will in California instead of having to put up with these horrible scenes of Elle being bullied that didn't really go anywhere. They have not done this storyline, given how everything went, and we just had more time with Mike, Will, and Elle. Like, that would have been my preference. But since they did give us this storyline, they didn't conclude it satisfactorily. So it's like, it's more kind of like, I would have much preferred them not to have the storyline, but since they did have the storyline, it didn't resolve well enough for me. Maybe I'm being too nitpicky, probably, but it just feels like when you look at the end of a season versus the beginning of a season, it's like, how did we even get here? And what's even happened to these people? Like, what was even the point of having them there?
Have a start point. You just can't start with, Vecna, infecting everyone, or
not.
Hellfire.
Obviously, we needed to see their lives in California. I just think it could have been done better.
I think that's the reason. Your point. I mean, for me, it probably works better because I do see it as part of the metaphor for, and I just think certain shows you come to for different things. Sell an interesting character maybe, and the idea of having her having powers and this particular thing is then the contrast with her friends, with Mike and the rest of them, and I think that's how you explore her humanity. She live a normal life, And
Yeah.
that's what this season did, and I think that was an interesting direction for them to go. So I don't necessarily need like resolution to like the bully
Mm.
ganging up on Al and her reacting. I mean, maybe in a way that was just a plot thing to get her to. I never expected it. You know, once she got arrested and she went off and stuff, I never really expected it to be. I did think that was it. I didn't really expect anything else from that plot. Your question about the Mike stuff a bit, which we can talk a bit more about later anyway. But I mean, I think the reason in special powers, or you know, he questioned that about, you know, can they ever be a regular couple, and and I like that stuff because that again it fits into what the show's exploring, and I think because to me, if it was just like, you know, Mike just got jealous because, you know, Elle was popular or had lots. I mean, that's just typical teenage drama, which has been done like 100 times. So I think portraying it the way they did is more interesting because it's almost like, you know, because one of the funny lines in the last two episodes is when he references Lois Lane, and he's sort of like, well, at least Lois Lane was a crack reporter type thing. So that's the reason for me. Then they went in that direction.
For me, this whole she's not going to need me, blah, 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 it just came out of nowhere. You know, like if there'd been some build up to it or something like that, but there wasn't. All of a sudden, Mike is like, "Oh, I'm afraid she's not going to need me," and I'm like, "Where the hell did this come from?" Like it just seemed to come out. I've always loved Mike and Elle since season one, but I have felt that they haven't written them very well these last two seasons. And I'm not sure if it's that they're trying to push them into a more mature relationship than they are at. I mean, they're still only 14, 15 years old. And I'm not trying to be one of those condescending adults who says that teenagers can't fall in love or can't express love, because of course they can. But I feel like they're making Mike and Elle like this big to the end of the earth soulmate couples. And it's like, dudes, they're 14. Like, you can let them still be like innocent and pure and childlike and still have this connection, because one of the things I loved about Mike and Elle in seasons 1 and 2 is that their connection was so pure. It was so innocent. And I know it's going to evolve as they get older, but it feels like they made this jump from season 2 to season 3 where all of a sudden they're making out teenagers, which, by the way, even Millie Bobby Brown has talked about how creepy that was in season 3. So I am definitely not alone on this. And now in season 4, we have like, oh my God, no, them making out when they were only 13. We did not need to see that. And I've had talks with other people about this, and it's just not comfortable, man. But like,
Well,
season,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know if it's uncomfortable because they're the same age. I mean, it's
Oh
not
no,
really.
I just mean for me as an adult. Like, I feel like the Duffers sometimes forget that even though their show is about children, it's not
Yeah.
for children. You know, if this was a show aimed at 13 and 14-year-olds, I'd say sure, let them kiss. But it's a show aimed at adults, and adults don't need to be sitting
Well,
around teenagers make out, like, or watching preteens
well,
make.
I mean, arguably, it's a show for everybody. I mean, up to a point, it has broad appeal, doesn't it? I think. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean,
probably
when you
you
look,
wouldn't
you're
go
not going to be
super
sitting like
young.
5 and 6-year-olds.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no, true,
trying to
true.
over
No.
TV. But yeah, no, I feel like in season 4, Mike and Elle's relationship is suddenly like I said, like this big to the end of the earth. I love you, and you're the love of my life, and my life started the day I met you. It's like, kid, you're 14. Your life hasn't even started yet. Like,
Yeah,
let's
but
take it
they're
down a notch.
teenagers, aren't they? Isn't that pretty realistic to how
That's true,
things can
actually.
seem extreme?
Little scene at the pizza parlor where he put the sunnies on and he was like, "Do I look cool? I feel like I look cool."
That was
And
very
then she
good.
just said, "I miss you." And then there was the whole pineapple on pizza debate, which, if we're going to throw in our opinions, no, pineapple does not belong on pizza. Argyle, thank you very much. That's just
It's a
me.
weird mix. I mean, I can eat it, but no, it is a weird sort of idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
So,
always enjoy these stuff like time capsule stuff because
mhm.
I can imagine maybe back in the 80s that's where someone first had that bright idea.
Mike and Elle stuff this season, it just, I don't know, maybe because they separated them and then had him do like this whole big I love you. For me, it didn't really work. It's not a huge nitpick because I love Mike and Elle anyway, so I'm always happy to see them together.
Elle had a better season than Mike.
Oh, definitely.
But then even Mike had some nice moments, I think, with Will. But the speech itself is that sort of thing is what Stranger Things does really well.
That's true. That is true.
And
I will,
and I think that's once again why I had a great time with the finale, like double finale, if you want to, because it just hits so many of those epic Stranger Things moments. And
yeah,
I think Stranger Things, a little bit like Buffy and other shows like that, it's a really sort of positive show where it's sort of reinforcing this idea of friendship can sort of overcome everything type thing. And I mean, that's once again what we saw this season type thing. So the actual payoffs, you know, like the speech he gives to Elle to like encourage her, is those moments really landed for me. I think, and you know, certain nitpicks, but I think once the season really gets into its groove and you're really setting these things off and paying them off, and you know, I mean, the budget was really well spent this season. I mean, it was. Because sometimes you worry then the effects aren't going to be that good when you have that big, but the effects by and large, maybe the odd one not great, but overall the effects was so good this season.
Oh yeah. You know what I loved and what I thought was absolutely awesome is that Vecna's makeup is like 90% practical effects.
Yeah.
Like they actually put Jamie Campbell Bower in that suit. I think they said it took like 7 hours to apply, but I mean, it was worth it because they could not have made him look that cool with CGI, you know. And obviously there is some CGI working with him with the special effects, but I just think that whole look of Vecna just works so well because it is practical effects, and we've talked about this before in other videos, how practical effects are just, you know, amazing, and they always win. So I thought that makeup was really cool.
And that's really like fitting considering the whole Elm Street vibe of the season and how it did feel like a throwback to that sort of thing. And practical effects being so important, you know, in those movies.
Another thing I found with Volume 2 is, okay, I want to say a lack of follow through, but it's not exactly that. It's more that, okay, so in the interim between Volume 1 and Volume 2, there were so many theories going around as to what was going to happen. There were theories that Will was going to go into Upside Down. There was theories that Eddie was going to have to save everyone with his guitar riffs. There were theories that, you know, that Elle was somehow going to get like melded with Vecna. There were like all these really cool theories and none of them came true. And that really pissed me off because I found that a lot of the stuff, the way it did play out, was actually quite underwhelming because it wasn't what everyone was speculating on. And again, I don't know if this is just me letting the fandom get a hold of me and falling for that, but
the Eddie one happened, didn't it? Pretty much.
I mean, but the theory was that because he was up on the trailer by himself, the main theory was that everyone else had gotten sucked into Vecna's curse and he was going to play. But even that, like, that was a great moment, okay? Eddie playing Metallica, like, that was awesome. People have pointed out that apparently the actual song in universe was only released like 2 weeks before the events of the film. So, like, everyone's like Eddie sitting around in his trailer just practicing, you know, the Metallica song.
And once again, like the Kate Bush song, that song went to number one as a result.
But I thought the song was going to be like some big, like, epic save everyone thing, and it was really just a distraction to get some Demobats away from the thing. So again, to me, it felt a bit underwhelming. Like, you've given this character this really awesome big moment, but it's kind of
it didn't feel underwhelming when you were watching it.
Well, that's true. The actual rip was cool. I also found Eddie's death a little bit underwhelming as well. Again, because I thought he was going to die like saving Steve or saving Dustin or avenging Chrissy, but instead he just kind of rides off with some Demobats after him and then decides, oh, hang on, I'm tired of riding. I'm going to turn around and fight them. His actual death scene, heartbreaking. Like, absolutely heartbreaking. Apparently, the "I love you, man" line was ad-libbed by the actor, by Joseph.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. Dustin, oh, Dustin's gonna have some issues next season
Yeah.
because, like,
Yeah, we'll get there. But yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
But that was kind of underwhelming to me. Will's painting, there was such a big build up to Will's painting, and that kind of got.
Thing.
Mm.
It landed for me. It was
Oh, okay. Well,
an
that's good.
it was an effective death. And I do actually have a point, because you're saying about how in the grand scheme of things the guitar thing and that was, reasonably small, because it was just but that's what I like about the whole build up and then the whole way that final episode plays out, because
Okay.
I absolutely love how every one of that gang has a role to play. I mean, to me,
fair
that's
enough.
classic Stranger Things.
That's
So
true.
it's almost like if one thing falls through the cracks and doesn't work, the whole thing could go belly up.
That's a good point. And they even say that as they're planning.
Yeah.
They're like, you have to wait for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 if any of these. So I'm with you.
I like
that's
how
very
well
point.
that's thought through, and
Yes,
Nancy
that's
being
some
real
Scooby-Doo stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did like that. I did love Nancy, Steve, and Robin facing down Vecna. I think we've talked about this before, but like Nancy's got a whole like Ellen Ripley thing going on.
Yeah,
like she really does. I think even Joe Keery and Maya Hawke have said that, like when they've done like interviews and they were talking about how Natalia was like just fantastic, because they were talking about how they, she's got a real gun and she's got the kickback, and they're like, she was just fantastic. And then you have like that zoom in on her face as she finally delivers like the death blow, and it's like, yeah, that she's gonna make Ellen Ripley proud, isn't she? She's pretty bad.
I mean, I think she had a really great season. I think because the actress in, was it episode 8, particularly because obviously it started with her in Jeopardy.
Yes.
I think the actress in episode 8 did her best acting that she's done on the show. Because I'm thinking of that scene and the way she reacted, the facial expressions, and I'm also thinking the scene in the weapons store when she bumps into Dickhead Jason. So that was very intense when she was trying.
That was a great scene. We talked about that off camera. Such a great thing.
Season, like maybe her best, probably her best. I mean, I liked her in season 3 because I did like the reporting stuff and the stuff with that. But I think I like the character generally, but obviously in the past maybe she's been too bogged down by relationship drama, so it feels like this season, because obviously the Stancy stuff was just a wink and a nod, so that stuff was nice, that stuff was cute, but it didn't prevent her from doing her own thing with and taking the lead to actually be the leader of them, like putting this plan together.
Oh, she was so good.
So good. So.
Yeah, this is the first season since season 1 that I have really loved Nancy. I think she's like really back in good form this season. And I think separating her from Jonathan was a good idea. I just feel like his character drags her down a bit. So having her away from him, and this is not even me saying like that she should be with Steve instead. I just don't think that Jonathan as a character complements her character. I think she works much better when she's by herself. I think Robin is a great compliment to her character. I think I love her and Robin and their friendship.
Yeah, they've got really good chemistry.
They've got really great chemistry.
And like season 4, you would probably expect typically then Robin would be the tough, stronger one, but it's actually Nancy, and I think that's just how she's grown over the 4 seasons. Because I actually like when they go in the house and she's actually encouraging Robin. She's saying, you can do this sort of thing, because when you've got the creatures, so. Moments like that are really good, and I really like the, them as a trio, like Steve, Robin, Nancy.
I do too,
because they all had something a bit different, and they gel really well together.
Yeah,
so that's.
Really I think cool. They're great.
Wow.
Here's something I'm going to admit to, which kind of contradicts my earlier feelings about resolution and stuff, but I'm actually kind of glad that they didn't resolve the Nancy, Jonathan, Steve stuff, because I think that would have been too rushed if they'd done that this season. So I
It
kind of
would
like
have to
that.
be next season
Exactly. So I kind of like
yeah.
that Jonathan came back. Steve just kind of quietly stepped back, didn't do anything, didn't say anything. But Jonathan's still being a douchebag and lying to his friend. And oh my God, I know he hasn't seen Steve in 8 months, but his little "who's going to be in charge" Steve comment, I wanted to punch him in the face. It's like, oh yeah, because Steve hasn't been running around trying to save everyone and being awesome and being gainfully employed and being, you know, the most awesome best friend to his lesbian best friend in the world, while you've been off what, getting stoned and hitting golf clubs at cars. Really, Jonathan? You want to come back and throw shade at Steve Harrington? I don't think so.
Yeah, but it's not like Jonathan has been around to see any of that.
I know, but like,
and
I don't like Jonathan
probably
that much.
seeing Steve Harrington in season 1, you could probably imagine. Really,
Maybe.
is that the same
But
guy?
still, though, when he said that, I was like, oh, I will reach through the TV screen and punch you in your stupid stoned face.
Yeah, no, it was uncalled for, and I'm glad then Nancy put him right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Steve, his whole little daydream about being a father of 6, which he kind of already is when you think about it. He already has 6 kids.
Yeah.
And I thought that was beautiful. I thought that was like a beautiful little moment for him. I don't mind that he confessed his love to Nancy, you know, and she didn't really return it again. I feel like it's kind of on that journey, you know, like she's still with Jonathan, she's still got stuff to sort out. Steve's just being honest with her, but it feels like he's being honest with her without any kind of like expectation of reciprocity. He just wants to let her know how he feels. So I love Steve.
So that's fair enough.
So I liked that.
It's going to be really interesting next season with that, because we said we never saw that coming with this season. We never thought that they were going to return to the possibility.
I had put the lid on it. I had put the lid on it, and I'd put it in my back box of ships that were never going to happen. And I went, okay, we had season 1, and then this season just playing with my poor Stancy heart. Like, what are you doing?
Because I mean, I don't know what the ship name is. I'm sure someone's come up with one, but I'm still gonna stick to Robin.
You're still on the Jancy side?
No, not the Jancy side.
Oh.
I'm sticking with my prediction of Robin.
Nancy and Robin. Ronan, it's called.
Is that what I knew there would be one.
I totally get that. Like, I 100% get that. They are such a great dynamic, and they have such good chemistry. So I totally.
I think also maybe I'm just wondering, because of this show, the way it likes to subvert things, is then they might sort of really tease you with the stancy stuff and then maybe pull a rug out from, and like, I don't know. I mean, we can talk about maybe what later on what might happen in season 5, but that's something I could imagine. I could imagine in the final episode, in like the last time you see them, then it could be a term where she suddenly shows up and she's with Robin.
That would be cool. That would be good. That would be kind of cool.
That would be a good way to do it.
Yeah. I still do keep going back to that character thing that my friend pointed out, which is, would Robin really date the girl that her best friend has a crush on? Like, is that really in character for her? But if they do a time jump, then that could be cool. You know, they haven't seen each other for a little while. Yeah. That being said, I thought Robin and her crush Vicky was so cute.
Yeah.
Like, they were so cute.
Yeah, Molly Ringwald look alike.
She did look like Molly Ringwald.
As soon as I saw her, that was
Ringwald vibes.
my thought. But
yeah. No, I'm definitely with you on that. Yeah.
Wouldn't do that to her best friend. Well, I mean, if her best friend gets killed off next season, then
why would you say such a thing? That is blasphemy. Keith, stop it.
Opens the door to what was the ship name? Robin and
Ronan.
Yeah.
Like, at the beginning of the season, they kept building up about like this painting that Will has done, and again, it was because a lot of people were theorizing that the painting was going to have like a key in it or a clue in it, or was going to be like, you know, and then it was like, oh, it's just a painting of the dudes with a dragon. It's like, oh, okay. Again, it was more kind of like, why would you build it up when it's just going to be like nothing? It's not a huge nitpick. It was just another one of those little things that I was like, this is a build-up. There's a lot of theory surrounding it, and
Is building it up, or is it the internet and the media
no, see that
surrounding?
definitely some of it was from the fandom. Like I said, I do think in between volumes 1 and 2, because I spend so much time on the internet and I'm on like Tumblr and Twitter, and like theories just run wild on these sites. I think I did let the hype get to me a bit. So partially this is possibly my own fault for buying into the hype and for being like, oh yeah, this could be this, but
because I mean, in the moment, like in that scene, I think it works well. I think it works as a nice character beat for Will.
Oh, poor Will. No. That whole scene was so heartbreaking, though, when he was telling Mike about Elle, and he was so clearly talking about himself. I think they're actually doing a really good job. I know a lot of the LGBT community does not agree with this, and so I can't really speak against them as a straight person, but I think they're building Will's coming out nicely, because I think people are forgetting that even though this is a supernatural show and stuff, these characters still live in the 80s. Like, obviously, gay people existed back then, duh. But it's more like, do you really think a 14-year-old boy in 1980s America is going to just come out to his best friend? That's just not going to happen. You know, it has to be a slow build. So I really loved Jonathan's speech to Will. We finally had Jonathan do something useful this season. I mean, you know what? You want to get stoned, buddy? That's your thing. I got nothing against that. You do what you want, but at least be useful while you're stoned. Okay. But no, his speech to Will
that was a good moment.
That was beautiful.
Because that's been some of Jonathan's better stuff, hasn't it, in the show?
Absolutely. Jonathan always shines best when it's about his love for his brother and his family. Like in season 1, I loved Jonathan and his protectiveness over Will in season 1. You know, they had the really cute scene where they listened to the Clash song. He went to his dad's to try and find him. All of that was just so beautiful. I mean, they even got some of that in season 2, but then in season 3, it's like they just forgot that they were brothers, you know, like they were almost never together. They didn't really have much scenes together. And then Jonathan this season has, like I said, been useless. So that speech that he gave to Will, I thought that was just beautiful and was really neat.
I mean, that scene was what I thought was, like you said, really heartbreaking, really good. And I think it's partly why Will has had a better season. I think because him showing his loyalty to Mike, and that scene is really emotional, because how hard must it be really for Will in that position? Because it's the scene that really confirms, I think, that he is gay, and that he probably does have feelings for Mike, romantic feelings. And it's just a really subtle bit of like acting and directing, just him looking away, looking out the window and sort of crying under his breath a little bit. And I just love like Jonathan seeing it in the rear view mirror, and he just knows what's it about, really. So no, that was a great scene. That was
I loved that. I also loved Will and Elle reuniting. I loved seeing how worried he was for Elle, and it just really shows that they've become close and that they are close siblings now. I thought that was beautiful, because I've always wanted more Will and Elle content. Ever since season 1, I have wanted Will and Elle content, because they're so linked, you know. So I think it's great that we're getting a little bit of that.
Feels, for narrative purposes, in many ways they've sort of been split up, but there was always sort of even though
Sorry, no, you were saying?
Oh, it's all right. I was just going to say, even though the California stuff was the weakest, I think there were little gems, little moments.
There were little nuggets kind of hidden away. I also liked how Will and Jonathan both refer to themselves as Elle's brothers. Like she's completely assimilated into their family.
And I know it wasn't a massive thing in the season, but did you enjoy them going to visit Susie? Yeah, that was quite good.
That was cute. Yeah. That was a cute scene. I thought that was a nice kind of lighthearted caper to kind of offset the heaviness that was going on in Hawkins. In Hawkins they're dealing with like people's limbs exploding and death and destruction. But over in California they're just doing a nice little field trip to some chick's house where there are way too many children. So that was a nice funny segue.
Because because it was like we do know what, because they needed like a computer hacker, didn't they? So it's like we do know someone, but she's in like such and such state, and like I like Jonathan, because doesn't Jonathan say, "Oh no," and then we'll start singing the song never end.
Look at what you see.
Yeah, that was really good.
That was a nice little callback to season 3, and I thought it was a nice little organic way to kind of fit Susie into the show again, so that we saw her again. We remembered she was there, but it wasn't overkill.
Yeah, because it's probably similar to what you've said about Erica, where for you at least, because I fucking loved the Erica stuff anyway in season 3, but for you, where you did have a problem with it, I'm guessing this season the way they worked her in was more satisfying, where it was in small doses and the character worked better for you.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was fun.
That's fair.
All right, so I guess we should get to the big one, which is Max's fate and how they did all of that, because we've talked a little off camera about how we feel about this. So I guess I'll start with my unpopular opinion. So let me just say, I love Max Mayfield. Okay, I really do. I think Sadie Sink is awesome, and part of me is very glad that we'll have her back again. But a huge part of me just wishes that they had killed her, because it was not satisfying for me, and I feel like the Duffer Brothers have pulled one over on us, the sneaky bastards. Like, they kept building this up. We're gonna kill a main character. Be ready, people, because someone is gonna die. And then they cheated us. And they didn't kill her off. And I just feel like it just didn't work for me, because I feel like they cheated. Since when does Elle have the power to bring people back from the dead? This is the whole thing we're going to have to talk about.
Well, we'll talk about it now. Because I have actually been thinking about it since you first brought it up.
Okay. Do share. See if you can get me to let go of some of this anger.
Okay, so I have a theory, and what it is I don't think it's literally then she has like a power where, I don't know, like she could touch someone's chest and stuff. I don't think I think what actually happened was at the end of the scene, where obviously they sort of think Max is dead, and they're like, they've called the ambulance and all the rest of it. And Elle says, "No, I'm not letting you go." And the scene sort of ends with her going into like the memories. So I think it was that actually led to her keeping Max alive, albeit on the, obviously she's in a coma, but so I think that's what actually happened, and they actually used that, which is something they did set up, where you can sort of, it's a way to, if you find a good memory, that's a way to sort of protect someone. Like,
I get what you're saying, but by the same token, she restarted her heart. Like,
because
we've literally never seen Elle do anything like that.
Because the previous scene ended like that. That's the way I read it. Then that's maybe why she didn't die, sort of thing. Which she still might die. I mean, let's point that out. She's in a
true. That is true.
So that's the way I read it.
I just feel like they were just way too sneaky.
I can sort of buy Elle would have that sort of power based on what we've seen. But
I mean, again, I kind of get that.
I guess I like to read it as, because that is the way the scene ended. Like, the scene ended with Elle going into those memories, so she was clearly trying to save Max at the end of that scene. So that's the way I read it. Then that's sort of what stopped Max from actually dying, and she's just in a coma. And obviously, I'm guessing they're going to expand on this stuff in season 5. But I
hope so, because
they surely will. Because I mean, Max is in a coma, and obviously they're not gonna.
Yeah.
That's the other thing for me is I think wait and see, because these writers have a good track record of, doing something interesting and paying stuff off.
Yeah, but
They
I do
have
also feel like
consistently done that for 4 seasons. So
they're also
I,
really scared of killing their main characters, though. This is like the third time we've had a main character almost die and then be discovered to still be alive. And it's like, come
well, I
on.
mean, Eddie died.
Yeah, but
But,
he's not a main character. He's
well,
just a
he
new
was.
character.
Well, he
We
sort of was this season.
ish, but I mean, you could say that
But
about
yeah, I
Bob in
guess.
season 2 as well.
I was
We
going to
have
say,
not. Yeah.
actually, I do feel Eddie is like the Bob of season 4,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. I
Bob.
think you need characters like that, and it's not. I mean, they swerved us a bit like that because I think, because I've mentioned to you actually how how they actually did a pop doll of Eddie. They wasted no time. So
Yeah.
that actually had me thinking he was going to like survive this season. So it wouldn't surprise me if they just made the doll as a way to swerve. It's like, oh, this is going to be a long-term character.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff with Eddie, I think I like the stuff with Eddie. I thought it was fine. I thought the emotion of his death landed. I liked the way he went out. But I know what you mean. I mean, part of it, I think you have to remember it could still happen in season 5, and they sort of know where they're going at this point. And my other thing, which I do feel strongly about, is I don't think it actually matters if anyone lives or dies in this sort of. I think it's just about having those stakes in the first place and feeling the tension. Because you definitely felt the tension.
Oh, this season, yes, 100%. In the final 2 episodes, I was so stressed. I spent the entire episode. But then that's the thing. It was like all this stress for nothing because it didn't lead anywhere.
Well, yeah, but you don't know yet, do you? Because it depends what they do.
Well, I don't think they're going to kill her off next season. I mean, if they were going to kill her off, they would have killed her off this season.
Well, maybe, but if they come up with a compelling storyline, like say they really do something interesting with her being in a coma. Because one thing I agree with you about, which you said off air when we were talking about it, is if they do it in the first episode, then that's a waste. I want them to really do something with the storyline. Because with it being Stranger Things, I sort of wonder if maybe they'll do an episode, or at least part of an episode, maybe part of a story, where you actually have it in like Max's mind, in her subconscious, or something like, maybe a bit similar to some of the stuff you've had with Elle this season, but that sort of thing. I could see them maybe doing that and really making this just this sort of one of those, like, a little bit like with Elle, where Max has to overcome some psychological tasks or whatever, within her stuff. I mean, obviously, for Elle, it's a good character beat. Then she's determined to bring her back, and she continues to try. I do like that as a character beat for Elle. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, wait and see, because these writers, they know how to write compelling stuff, and they've done it for 4 seasons now.
We'll have to see. I just really feel like they don't have a sense of follow through, like, at all. Like I said, this is the 3rd time we've seen a character die and come back, and it's getting old. Like, can we?
Yeah.
Really,
hang on. That was going to be one of my points, because I don't remember you having this complaint with Hopper. Like, when we talked about that, you didn't have this complaint. And
when they killed Hopper in season 3, and we discovered he was still alive, I remember being like, oh man, you put Elle through all of that for nothing. But they didn't tell us over and over and over again that they were going to kill a main character. I think that is what I'm more annoyed about than anything else. The fact that they gave us this build up, and then they didn't follow through. It's like, you can't do that shit, man.
Yeah, but again, is that just the hype and the internet? You don't know for a fact the writers were.
No, they did. I'm fairly certain they put on Twitter that someone is going to die.
No,
and then,
no. I'm not having any of that. There's no way they would have said that.
There was definite confirmation.
Because there's no point.
That
I mean,
was gonna be, like, that they were going to kill off a main character.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, debatable whether Eddie's the main character. I mean, I guess in this season, but
Eddie's death I saw coming. I was pretty certain that Eddie was going to die. Stephen and I kept talking about how it just made sense narratively for his character.
That's good because it makes sense. It's well written. The stuff with him and Dustin.
Yeah, and don't get me started on Lucas's whole speech at the hospital where he's all like, she actually died, her heart stopped, because that was so just the Duffers putting that in there so that if any of us came back and said, hey, you said you were going to kill a character, they're like, well, technically she did die. It's like, I'm going to punch you in the face.
I don't know. You're searching for things.
I love Max. I'm very glad that we're going to have more time with Max. If they do something interesting with this, it might lessen my grr factor a little bit. But in all honesty, I would have been like this with any character if they'd done this. I was actually fully prepared for Steve to die. I was gearing myself up so big. I was like, okay, Rachel,
and he still might.
Gonna kill Steve.
And he still might. It's not over yet.
He won't. See, now that we know that Elle can bring people back from the dead, it's like, well, now she can just bring anyone back from the dead. They've removed the stakes again. Like, if they'd actually killed someone at the end of this season, I would have gone into season 5 thinking anything can happen. But now I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah, but to be fair, you probably had a similar feeling going into this season, and then they surprised you, so they might surprise you again.
So they might surprise me again. I just think that I think they pulled one over on us with Max's death. I just feel like they didn't have the guts to follow through on what they said they were going to do. And look, I know we all hate Joss Whedon these days, and I get that, but at least he used to kill characters off. Like, I think they need to have a talk to him. Like, kill off a main character. You have to. Otherwise, we go through season after season after season of all of these characters still surviving. And it's like, come on.
But it's not. It's like, when you look back over Stranger Things as a show and the legacy of it, it's not really going to be dented by whether they killed off a main character. That's not... The legacy's going to sustain much more than that. I mean...
No, definitely. It definitely will. But I still just think this was kind of a shitty move on their part. This is another reason why I'm thinking it would have been better for them to drop the whole season together. Because then we wouldn't have had that build-up. We wouldn't have had that anticipation. And it may have played out differently.
Yeah, but
because they gave us that gap and they gave us all that build-up, it was like...
See... Well, true, but it delivered in other ways. Like, the finale delivered because it felt like an epic finale with the Stranger Things moments. Because if you're a Stranger Things fan, the Stranger Things moment generally landed. You know, because, I mean, okay, you might say it's a little bit cheap, them writing it, oh, she's in a coma sort of thing. But outside of that actual moment landed, you know. And it's similar with, like, the Hopper death in season 3. Obviously, I did a rewatch of season 3 recently, and that moment still lands. It still had me emotional, even though I know he survives and comes back. So I think that's a good sign if it still hits you in the moment, sort of thing.
Fair enough. Might be a point of contention we'll have to agree to disagree on, or just wait and see what they do with season 5.
I don't remember you complaining about it at the time. I'm sure when we had that discussion, you...
Oh, Hopper. Oh, yeah, Hopper's a different thing. No, I'm talking about, like, the Max death. We'll just have to, like, leave it. That being said, her actual, use air quotes, death scene was devastating. Like, oh my God. Lucas holding her in his arms while she's bleeding from the eyes and crying about how she doesn't want to die and she doesn't want to go. Like I said, give Sadie Sink all the awards, man. She was so good. I thought
she's
Caleb,
my
she's your
MVP of the season.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I thought Caleb's performance was great in that too, the desperation in his voice. You know, as he's holding her. So we've talked a lot about negatives. How about I list some positives so that we can end this on a slightly brighter note before we speculate about season 5?
Well, we've still got,
Well, we've still got to discuss.
I don't know. It's just skip it. I mean, well, first of all, the line is such a good line. Oh yeah, I piggy bank from
a pizza dough oven.
Yeah, that's one of the greatest lines of recent.
I love Max. Like, what? What is happening? Elle turning up in Max's dream. I loved that, and I loved like Max like grabbing her face and like being like, "Are you real? Are you real?"
Yeah. Did you? Because I think we can track back in a bit and maybe talk about good and bad characters this season. We've done it a little bit, but did you like the Elle stuff in general? The stuff in the facility, like when she went through this whole test type. It was a bit drawn out, but generally speaking, I liked it. It was well done.
I did too. Yeah, I thought it was a little bit drawn out, but I thought it was good. I liked seeing the background with the kids. I liked that we got more on that, especially because I remember when I first watched season 1, turning to Stephen and going, okay, so if she's number 11, what happened to numbers 1 through 10? And that was always in the back of my mind. And obviously, since they did not do a great job with it in season 2, when they introduced Carly, I liked that this season did a better job of expanding the Hawkins lab lore. I actually really liked Brenna's death scene. I thought that was really well done. I really liked that even though Elle was there when he died, she wouldn't give him, like when he said, "Please tell me you understand," she wouldn't give him that, because I was like, no, you don't deserve that. She might be here with you, but you don't deserve her understanding. You don't deserve like that. What happened to Owens though? Like last time we saw him, he was being beaten up in the bunker. That. Yeah,
I don't know if they might come back to him next season.
I'm hoping they do, because I like Owens. I have to say, I did like that they had Brenna still be Brenna, and be like, you're not leaving. Because I was like, there's no way he's suddenly a good guy. He's Brenna. So I thought that was good. So no, the Elle stuff with her discovering her past, I thought was good. I loved the reveal of Henry.
The reveal was great.
That was a fantastic reveal. That was so well done. I thought that was good. Like I said, maybe a little bit drawn out, like you said, but pretty good.
But yeah, I mean, it was great the way they tied the two plots together, and because I mean, once again, the direction from the Duffer Brothers is so good, and just the way they connect these things. So I mean, the whole thing about Nancy sort of essentially seeing what Elle is seeing, but she's seeing obviously through these flashbacks to the past, and just the way they it flowed into one another. I mean, that ending was such a good ending to that episode.
And I liked that they showed that, like, in the past, how Elle had lost her powers, before, and why she was not as strong in season 1 as we've seen her be, and I thought that was a nice bit of continuity. And I'm really looking forward to, and again we can talk about this more in a little bit, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what season 5 does with the Upside Down and with the special children, and like where that leads to, because I think that's a really great bit of mythology. And obviously it's definitely going to be connected to Will, because we know the Upside Down has been frozen since he appeared there, so there's definitely more stuff to delve into with Will. And I think that now, I think we talked about this a bit off screen, but I did get very confused with, is Henry the Mind Flayer, or did he like merge with the Mind Flayer? Because they make out that it was like him the whole time, but like he sees the Mind Flayer when he goes into the Upside Down. So I was a bit confused about that. What was your takeaway from it?
No, I don't think he's the Mind Flayer. I think he sort of had a hand in developing like that certain side because we saw him with the drawing as a kid.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't read it as literally he was the
Okay.
Mind Flayer.
Because there was something about Henry being able to like absorb people's powers or something, or take part of them in. So maybe that's what happened, is he kind of like took part of the Mind Flayer into him, so they're like connected now and working together as a big bad, as opposed to the Mind Flayer being. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a little confusing for me.
A little bit, but probably in a good way. Like I said, I think that's what's good about this sort of show sometimes, is I think a lot of times it poses questions, and I think generally speaking it tends to answer them, but I think a lot of times, even if you're left with a certain question mark, it's in a satisfying way where you can discuss it and you can put logical reasons on it, but it's almost like there's no right or wrong answer. Like there are 2 or 3 maybe possible answers, which depending on your point of view. So it sort of felt like that with something like that, where even if they don't completely answer it, it doesn't feel like bad writing. It just
not bad writing. I was just a little bit
within
confused
the
at that point.
Of But I sort of, maybe it's a bit similar to some of the stuff we've seen, like with Billy, like in season 3, where obviously they can take over someone and they can use like a human as a host type thing. I mean, obviously it's not the exact same thing, but it might be a similar sort of thing. But no, that was obviously definitely, I think, for both of us, one of the best things about this season. Obviously the Vecna plot and mystery, it obviously got back to some of the mystery feel.
I loved that. I loved that about this season, that we finally got a mystery, because the previous 2 seasons we didn't really have a mystery. We kind of knew what was going on, but in this season we just had no idea, and I loved that, because that was what drew me in season 1, was like, I have no idea what's going on, I have to find out. So this season had that sense of urgency for me again, of like, what is going on, what is happening, and like we said, that reveal was just so satisfying.
Vecna was a great villain, and obviously we both appreciated, because I think probably they'd gone as far as they could with making it more of a sci-fi show. Obviously there's definitely moments that it still feels like a sci-fi show, but I mean the switch to a more horror vibe, I think, for us, because it's always done horror well as a show anyway, so it made a lot of sense. It just gives it a bit of a fresher feel, maybe.
I also love the Upside Down breaking into Hawkins at the end of the season. I thought that was done really well, and I thought that final shot of them all just kind of standing over Hawkins, as as the smoke rises and the Upside Down seeps in. I thought that was really cool.
So and I think the mythology this season, I think we both really liked that, and expanding on that, and just starting in the 70s in that opening episode.
That was great.
That was really intriguing. That was a great hook for the season, and obviously there was some great hooks, like at the end of that first episode with Chrissy and what have you. But so just one thing we haven't really focused on, because I know you said that although you mostly enjoyed the Russia stuff, the Murray, you said in volume 2 you weren't so keen on it. So if you just
when it came to the Russia stuff, there were aspects of it that I liked. Like, for example, as I've talked about, the Murray and Joyce team up.
Starsky and Hutch, apparently, according to Joyce.
Yes, I absolutely loved when Hopper was like, "Oh, it's nice that you came," and she's like, "Well, I always wanted to go to the Soviet Union with Murray," like I liked that. So I like that. I think the parts of the Russia part that bored me was that it kind of felt to me like at the end of season 3, they killed Hopper, right? But they obviously didn't kill him, so they had to send him somewhere. So they sent him to Russia, but then they were like, oh shit, well, what do we do with him now? Now we have to get him back to Hawkins. So for me, the Russia stuff lagged when it was concentrating kind of on like the escape stuff. I liked the characterization. I loved the talks that Hopper had with the what's his name? The Russian guard? Dimitrov. And how he's talking about how he was being punished. I thought the Demogorgon stuff was really good, but again, it was kind of like in this volume, it was like, okay, well, Joyce and Hopper are back together. let's get back to Hawkins. But instead, we had to kind of hang around. We had to hang around Russia for a bit. And for me, it's not that I hated them. It's just that again, they were kind of the least interesting parts. Like every time we switched back to Russia, it was like, oh, okay, we're here, we're done. Plus, I don't ship Joyce and Hopper, so I don't.
Well, true, but that's only a thing at the end of the season. Because, that's another satisfying thing. I think when you get all these characters reuniting and they've been a part all season, that's always satisfying. But
Elle and Hopper's reunion was one of my favorite scenes in the whole season.
Yeah.
So good. So beautiful. I loved that she talked about how she still left the door open 3 inches, and you can see that anytime her door is closed. It's still open 3 inches. I loved when she commented on his hair. What do you think? And she's like, bitch, and because it's like a little running joke with them. So, I loved that. But I don't know. I think the Russia stuff, it was like we wanted Joyce to get to Hopper. So she got to Hopper, and then it was like, but that was like... That was the goal. So once the goal was reached, it was like, oh, well, now we're just going to hang around in Russia for a little bit. So I didn't hate them. They were just, to me, the least interesting parts of Volume 2.
Okay. Yeah, that's maybe fair. Fair. I think one of the things I liked, because I liked what they did with... I just like how everything was connected in those fights, which made a lot of sense. So once again, almost... all the way in Russia, they had their role to play in helping the characters in Hawkins, and I like that about it. It was a well thought out sort of structure, and I guess it just makes it a little bit different because they're in another country, so they can't literally just hop on drive there or whatever. If it was like in Hawkins, it makes it a lot harder. And they sort of realised then time's limited and stuff. And so that stuff I liked. I think earlier in the season, it was a bit too slow moving, that plot. I think we've said then probably that stuff and the California stuff were the B plots, and then the other 2 plots were the A plot. But... one thing I did sort of enjoy, and I think this is just, again, part of shaking it up a little bit, like the feel of it, is I did actually enjoy the more action Bond-style feel of some of those scenes. Like, we talked about Hopper trying to escape when he's on, like, the, was it like a sledge or one of those sort of things? Yeah. that stuff was fun, and I actually just like how action-packed, when they had to land the plane, when Murray and Joyce are in the plane, and it just skidding like the trees and crash landing in the snow. I think sometimes it's good in this sort of show to mix things up like that and have a different sort of genre.
And as we've talked about, some of the stuff with Joyce and Murray just gave us the funniest things. My hands are like arrows.
The karate shit was insane. I absolutely burst. They played that off so well, but it was so funny.
I've talked about this before, but Murray was not a character I liked in seasons 2 or 3, so I really love that season 4 has let me like him and really appreciate his comedic timing. I did also like the emotional beat of Hopper being chased by the Demo dog and Joyce having a flashback to what happened with Bob and coming out to rescue Hopper. Because she was like, no, I am not going to have another funeral. I am not going to bury someone else again. So I thought that was a nice beat. And that was a nice little, a nice little tribute to Bob. Oh, Bob. If I could save one character, it would be Bob. I love Bob so much. But so I thought that was a nice character beat. Like I said, I personally don't ship Joyce and Hopper. I'm not really against them. I don't go crazy over them the way the rest of the fandom does. So,
I'm similar. I'm sort of neutral. I generally just like them as characters, and I like them as a pairing. But so they've always had that where they've sort of felt like the quote unquote parents of all these kids, regardless of if they're actually in a relationship romantic. So it's almost like in season 2, even with Joyce being with someone else, you can still have fun Joyce Hopper stuff. You can still have them be like the sort of spiritual parents to these kids, regardless of if they're. So, you know, I don't feel strongly either way about it. But
no, neither do I. I'm kind of like, if they
do still enjoy their chemistry and them as characters. And one touch I did like, because I thought the very end, like the final part of the last episode, was fantastic. I think everything. I mean, obviously, you have more of a problem with the coma stuff than me, but I mean, I guess if you eliminated that stuff, I think you would probably be happy with the rest of the stuff.
Oh, yeah.
There's just so much of the fun, you know, this is where they are type stuff. Obviously, that scene in the shelter is very good. I like that stuff. I like it. Makes sense. And now, having had this, you know, sort of, we're now in like, an apocalyptic type scenario. I think it makes sense, and they would set up shelters like that. And
definitely,
I like the characters going to volunteer and stuff like that. And there's lots of good stuff really at the very end. And I'm trying to think.
I liked them showing all the cars leaving Hawkins, you know, but now leaving Hawkins, and you saw like a bunch of cars just driving out of the place. It kind of reminded me a bit of the Buffy season 7, when you see everyone kind of getting out of Sunnydale, you know, like it shows that people, like, even though they don't know exactly what's going on, they know enough to get out of Dodge. And I think that's definitely a reflection of what things would happen in, like, if this were to ever happen, that definitely you'd see a big migration of people who could leave, probably would leave, you know. So I thought that was a nice little bit of, you know, realistic like reactions to what happened.
Because I mean, obviously going into next season, regardless of whether, you know, any of the main characters die, and that's, you know, wait and see. But I mean, I think the world in general of Stranger Things and Hawkins, the stakes are now there anyway, because it feels like this thing has expanded. And actually, that's something that's worth saying. If there is something which maybe you could say is a bold move, it's the fact that actually they lost in the end. You know,
that's true. They
didn't actually defeat Vecna. And that was a good sort of twist. Because I wasn't sure about some of the logistics of it, but I kind of, when Eddie died, I kind of figured, oh my God, they're screwed, because he's sort of got, I don't know if that counts as the fourth person, but I guess.
No, I think he used Max. I think it was Max who was used as the fourth person before she was revived.
Okay. So, it's maybe a technicality.
But have you heard? Well, now this is a good way to segue into season 5 theories. But have you heard the theory that Eddie will come back next season?
No, not yet.
Yeah. So they left the thing is they left Eddie's body in the Upside Down, or more than likely they had to, because all of the craziness was going on. There is this theory floating around, I've got it here somewhere, that Vecna will somehow take Eddie to be like his lieutenant, because they talk about, you know how the monsters are always taken from the D&D games. Apparently Vecna in the D&D game has an offsider who was actually mentioned in the very first season, and so the theory is that Eddie is going to become this character, and that they'll have to like somehow get him back from Vecna's clutches, because he's been like swayed to the side of evil, which is a very interesting theory. And like I said, it definitely they've worked it so that it goes into the whole D&D thing. But there we go. They need him to become Master of the Upside Down, I think it's called. And the Duffer Brothers actually like retweeted something which showed like a comparison between Palpatine and Vecna and Darth Vader and Eddie. So that's who he's kind of going to be, like that kind of thing. Here you go. So Eddie will essentially become Cass. Now Cass is apparently this secondary soldier. So in D&D, Vecna made Cass his lieutenant and gave him undead powers like a vampire. And then they're like, someone got bitten by bats. From there, Vecna made Cass a sword, and later Cass defeated Vecna after the sword started speaking to him against Vecna. So that is the theory, that Eddie may become this Cass character and somehow will become like Vecna's offsider. Look, I don't know if it's just people not wanting Eddie to be dead, because I totally
It
get
could
that,
be.
that desperate kind of like, no, he's not dead, he will come back. But that is an interesting theory about next season.
Yeah,
Because
it's
the Duffers have said season 5 is going to explore the lore of the Upside Down a lot. So that'll be very interesting, I think.
I mean, it's an interesting idea, and if it's something where it's consistent with what they do throughout the show, because they have obviously consistently gone back to, using Dungeons and Dragons and actually working that into, some of the ideas and things they've come up with. So, yeah, I mean, from that point of view, it would be another, especially since Eddie, the character was so much into that stuff. So that would be interesting, and that's the whole thing. Like, it could be actually, it might be one of these things, because I think a lot of times with these shows, I mean, this is a bit different because he was only in this season, but I mean, sometimes I think they do like to find a way to reuse the same actors. So I wonder if that might be, a fun sort of way to keep the actor around, where he could maybe play an evil side of himself, which might be, interesting to watch. Yeah. So
I think another theory is that Max could be taken by Vecna, or that she's somehow stuck somewhere. I do know that they've talked about doing a time jump, because to play like kids anymore, so they're thinking about doing a time jump. I'm wondering if season 5 will start with Max either waking up or somehow being able to reach Elle with her mind or something. I feel like Max in that coma is going to be the catalyst for everything that starts season 5. Like, that setup there, like the season will start with something connected to her. At least that's my theory.
Yeah, because it's sort of interesting what they would do, because apart from, I mean, obviously they do set up, season 5 a bit at the end of season. Well, I mean, because I was talking about that very end shot, which I absolutely loved. I mean, that was so Stranger Things, and the movie, the classic synth theme start coming in. But yeah, because they're talking about a time jump, it's a tricky one how they handle it with Max, unless they're just going to say she's just been in a coma these past. Like, obviously, it depends how much of a time jump, but yeah, that's obviously, like you said, that's maybe a decision they've taken just because of the cast growing up type thing, and it being a bit of a they definitely.
Well, I think we'll find out more about Will and his connection to the Upside Down. There is a theory that Will develop powers, which I find to be an interesting theory. I'm hoping that they do more with, the Upside Down, how Elle is connected to it, how Will is connected to it, and what exactly it means. Like, why is it stuck at the time that Will went there? What was it about Will's entry into the Upside Down that made it freeze? Like, there's definitely got to be something there that hasn't yet been explored.
Yeah, I think I would like to see more stuff with Will and his connection to the Upside Down, because it was quite a nice touch this season than actually, well, in the last episode when he actually got back to Hawkins and he had those senses, then he could actually feel. Yeah, it's quite appropriate. Then he was the one who actually knew that Vecna wasn't dead. He sort of had that sense, and that was quite a nice scene with him and Mike. Will sort of saying we have to get him, basically. So that's
I think they need to bring it back to Will, because he was kind of the central character that started it all. I saw someone describe him as like the Laura Palmer of Stranger Things. Like it's all connected to him. It's his mystery. It's his missing. The fact that he went missing. Like, he's been that central character. So even if he's not really present in the series as much as his character could be, his presence hangs over the series. And I'm like, that's actually not a bad description. And so I'm hoping season 5 really brings it back to that and shows us what is so special about Will. Because I do feel like Will has been neglected these last couple of seasons, like seasons 3 and season 4 didn't give him much to do. So hopefully season 5 will give him a bit more.
Yeah, I just think because of the nature of the original first series,
Mm.
I just think he's a hard character to write for
That's true. That is
because,
true.
he's not around, so you're not that invested in him the way you were the other kids. And I mean, generally speaking, I thought he had a good season this season. I mean, I think maybe it's because he was on that side of the plot where it was less relevant, then maybe it was just then he suffered a bit by association. But
Well, it was
actually,
definitely better than last season.
some of,
But
yeah,
so you're saying some of the stuff?
probably. Yes, some of the actual scenes individually, then we've talked about with him was, actually some good stuff. But yeah, I think I don't mind so much, having this sort of mix because I don't. It's probably a bit like Mike. I think Mike's now at a point where, in many ways, he's had his full sort of arc. Mostly, I mean, obviously they could still do something with him in season 5, but I mean, and I thought he had his moments this season, but yeah, he was a bit more on the back burner. But I don't. Yeah, I don't, because we've had plenty of great stuff with Mike as a part in the past, and I think generally maybe he's just reached his peak as a character. So then it's good to sort of develop these other characters because I mean, just going back to Max, I mean, I think she's now at this point where she is an MVP of the show, and I think that's one of the reasons why you might like she's now at this point where she's as important as probably anyone who was in the original show, like the original series. That so
Yeah. Mike taking a back burner, I didn't mind so much, but I feel that like we didn't really see Will much in season 1, like you said. But then season 2, they gave him such a great season in season 2, and they really showed Noah Schnapp's like acting abilities. And then season 3, all he really did was touch the back of his neck and go, "Ooh, he's coming." At least this season we did get a little bit more characterization, but I definitely want some more Will content. I hope season 5 focuses more on him and we get some more answers surrounding him and the Upside Down.
Yeah, he's just a weird character for me where I'm just not. I just don't think he's one of the best characters generally, and that might just be because, the nature of him, like you said, a little bit, although it's not that negative, but him maybe being a bit of a MacGuffin in the first season, then like literally he is important, but he's not. When we watch him, he's not like the most engaging character to watch. He's not like the most interesting. So he's just a bit of a weird sort of character. But I mean, he had a better season this season, which I'm
definitely
for. But that's something I was going to ask actually. Just talking about season 5 is it could be the only season maybe where. Well, maybe apart from first, although technically they were. But the only season where you actually might not have characters split up, like in these sort of different groups.
I was thinking that too. I was like, oh my God, final season, everyone's in the same place. Maybe we'll actually get a full season of everyone being together, because that would be awesome.
It might actually make sense,
Yeah.
They're now, it's about ultimately defeating Vecna.
I think they will have them all together. I think they know that for the final season, that's what the fans want. We want everyone together in Hawkins fighting this thing together. So they'll obviously still have the little dynamics within the big group. And so we'll probably see like little, friendship groups. But for everyone to actually be in the same country, in the same town, I'm hoping they do that in season 5. That'll be really good.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, I think I liked how they gave us a focus and how there was a cliffhanger for because once again it's debatable. Like the Duffer Brothers have always said they planned for 4 or 5 seasons, and I mean, I think what's partly satisfying about this season is I sort of knew it was going to be a cliffhanger because I think at this point they know the end game. So I think that's why I'm pretty confident they're going to stick the landing, because I think at this point it's just how you get there, but they sort of know where they're going type thing.
Well, I'm definitely more excited for the finale than I would have been like before season 4, because like I said, I had given up on Stranger Things almost after season 3. So I'm hoping season 5 will be
fantastic.
Season 3 is terrible.
No,
it's a mess, man. Oh, dude, we'll have to have a season 3 conversation at some point. It is just, I don't know what kind of drugs they were on when they were in season 3, man. It is no. But hopefully season 5 is awesome.
Yeah. So are you standing firm that you don't expect any major characters to die in season 5? You don't.
At this point, I don't trust the Duffer Brothers to kill off the main character. I just don't think they have the guts to after this season. I think it just kind of proved to me that they're all talk. Maybe they will.
Maybe the internet's all talk.
Maybe the internet's all talk too. That's true. Look, I think
I trust them to give us compelling stories, and
I do too.
And that's
I trust them to continue giving me Steve Harrington, who is the king, and I trust them to give me. I think we'll get what we get most seasons, which is good characterization, a fun storyline, good dynamics. I don't know where the final battle is going to lead. There is obviously going to be a big final battle between Vecna and the Mind Flayer. I had theorized for a long time that Elle would die in the final battle because she is really the only one that can go up against these creatures. I don't think they'll kill her off. In all honesty, I don't know who they could kill off in the final season that would make like a huge impact. Hopper's already had a death. They won't kill Joyce because she's too central. They may kill like one of the other characters. I honestly don't know. I think the Duffers will have everyone standing at the end. But hey, maybe they'll surprise me. Come on, Duffers, surprise me. Kill someone. No?
Well, well, they've killed a couple, but not main. Not main.
What about you? Do you reckon we're in for a character death in season 5, a main one?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it might. I don't know. Part of what you're talking about, it might just be a bit of a reluctance to kill off young people on screen. I think that might be part of it. Not the nuns. No, there's been a few, because I know he doesn't really count, but arsehole Jason, I mean, he had a
wasn't his death satisfying? That was really awesome. Seeing him literally get spliced in half, that was a good ending.
But I am sort of wondering, and I know this tends to happen sometimes with TV shows, is I think they've been with these actors for like 4 seasons, 5, and so I think they do become a bit like a family. So they maybe until like the final episode or coming up to the end, they might be reluctant. I don't know. I mean, sometimes just for stakes, although he's sort of not the best character anyway, but Jonathan could go.
That's true.
I mean, I did wonder about Joyce this season just because I thought maybe that sort of character, if they killed her, might made an impact. But because they sort of kept them in Russia and stuff, it sort of seemed a bit unlikely that someone like that would die. I mean, if she was in the thick of it in Hawkins, then maybe, because I mean, obviously we definitely speculated because we thought maybe Lucas at one point, like if he got in the crosshairs of trying to save Matt.
Oh, I thought he was actually going to die when Jason was beating him up. I was like, oh, this is it. This is who dies. It's Lucas. Lucas is going to die from this. I was very scared for him.
Yeah, so, he had a really good season, Lucas.
He did.
It might be his best season because I generally enjoy him, but this might be his best season, and I don't know. Yeah, that's something they could maybe do in season 5, but I'm not. Yeah, I'm not too sure. Yeah, like you said, they might be a bit
I think characterization in season 5 is going to be very interesting. Like I mentioned, Dustin is definitely going to have some issues after Eddie died in his arms. I think Lucas as well, obviously if Max is still in a coma, is going to have issues. So it will be interesting to see like these two characters, like especially Dustin, who is such a happy-go-lucky character, to see what the events of this season, the effect that they have on him in the future, and like what their characters are going to be like.
And I think that could be something that's good. Then we've not really seen that side of Dustin before.
No,
we've not.
no.
It would be a darker side to the character
Mhm.
where he's now at this point where he has to deal a bit more with loss and things like
Yeah.
that. And that was obviously quite a effective scene in the shelter
Mhm.
with Eddie's.
Oh, I loved that scene. I
was
thought that
a
was
good scene.
beautiful. Yeah.
So yeah, that could be a natural way to go with Dustin. Something a bit different, and like you
Yeah.
said, certain Lucas a bit as well. You know, having to deal with these things. So no, that could be a good way to go in season 5 with some of the characters. Yeah,
Have to wait and see what happens, but at least we're excited for it.
No, we are. Yeah, it
Dude.
probably won't be dull, but I mean,
No.
I am thinking of coming up with some predictions.
Nice.
For maybe a video. So I was going to ask you actually, because I think I know your rankings, but how would you rank the 4 seasons up to now? Like, where would you go?
Season 1 is still my favorite, just because it's so perfect. Like, it can just stand as its own. So it would go season 1, and I think season 4 is now my second favorite season, even with the ending that I didn't particularly like, because volume 1 was just so good, like so good. Volume 1 just blew me out of the water. Then season 2, which I'm okay with season 2. I've watched it a few times. I don't love it. I don't hate it, but it's not fantastic. But it does have Bob. And then season 3 would be the least, because season 3 sucks, Keith. So that's mine. 1, 4, 2, 3.
Yeah, okay.
What about you?
That's what's funny, because the twist on this is then I'm in agreement with one of those statements.
Okay, which statement?
The one I agree with is then this season is the second best season.
It is.
But
what's the first best in your mind?
It's season 3, because screw you, that's the best season.
Oh my God, what is wrong with you? I think this friendship is on precarious. We are skating on thin ice, buddy.
Okay, I'll make my cases. First of all, the character growth and development is fantastic in season 3. Second of all, the emotion at the end of the season, and the emotion in general. There's some great emotional moments and beats, like obviously we said about the great scene with Robin and Steve, you know, when the coming out scene.
Yes,
that's in season 3, and that episode, The Bite, is one of my favorite episodes of the whole show. So stuff like that, I think it had emotional highs, more emotional highs than maybe any other season. I think you make an argument. The character growth for me, by and large, was fantastic. I think, you know, certain characters suffer. I'll agree with that. But I think as you expand the cast, that's maybe going to happen. But, you know, there was a lot of good character growth. Obviously, Robin as a debut character was very good. I disagree with you about Erica. Obviously, I really enjoyed Erica in season 3. And some of the other stuff, I think it's just personal choice. It's just, as I said before, the invasion of the body snatchers plot really speaks to me. I really enjoy that stuff. Although I can understand how, you know, maybe with some of the stuff they went a bit far, it also led to it being very tense and unsettling as well. And obviously certain things like the Max and Elle stuff was very enjoyable.
I did love that. That is one part of season 3 I will give full props to. That was a fantastic friendship, and I think it really helped Elle grow that friendship.
And although it is, I mean, it probably then it's maybe Hopper's weakest season. But
oh, it's definitely Hopper's weakest season.
That stuff doesn't bother me the way it bothers you, because to me, I can actually see him as an Hawaii 5-0 star. To me, that is something I can see Hopper being, and there was still fun with that stuff. There was still fun with some of the stuff with Murray and with Alexei.
Alexei,
There was some nice stuff. There was still, and I think one of the things I like the most about the show and what it does with us, where we can see it in like a 2020s context, is I do like the way it explores the politics of the 80s. I've done my speech before, but the stuff with the more America and the politics of that, I thought was a really interesting thing for them to do, and I think they really captured the energy of malls and, you know, the effect and how impressionistic it is on when you first go to a mall, you know, back in the day, back in the 80s, where you suddenly had all these options, all these different shops, like multi-screen cinemas. And, you know, it's almost like you've never been born. And like now we just sort of take it for granted. But obviously the season explored the negative sides of that as well. But, you know, that's anyway. Sorry, I've tangented into season 3 stuff, but
that's fine. That's all good.
I made my points, but
so season 3, then season. Oh, sorry, no, your other point.
No, this is just about the show in general. I think that's the reason why season 1 isn't my favourite season. I accept as just a complete story, you know, beat for beat. I accept that on that level, it's probably the best season, the most consistent. But I think with this sort of show, I think it's a bit like Lost, and how we actually feel the later seasons of Lost are actually the best season. Like, I know we sort of share that. Like, we feel it's actually not till like season 4, maybe 5, then you actually get the best season. And I think it's because in that sort of show, the exciting stuff is more getting into the mythology and, you know, exploring these ideas and stuff, and sort of building up the characters. And this is what serialized drama is, serialized TV, and that's sort of what they've done in the later seasons of Stranger Things. They've actually developed the characters, and I think that's one of the arguments for it being multiple seasons, because you can actually now see their growth from season 1.
Definitely.
And personally, I do miss the days of having a proper, you know, 5-season sort of show where you go on this long journey. And because a lot of days, you know, especially with streaming shows, I think they do have a shelf life of sort of 3 seasons or something like that. So I do actually, I mean, it's maybe a debate for another video, but I do actually, it is nice to have a show now where the Duffers have been able to see their vision all the way to the end, sort of thing, and have. But anyway, tangent. So yeah, season 3. Screw you, Rachel. It's the best season.
Well, there's no accounting for taste.
Yeah, I would go with 4.
Yeah.
So 2. So I would go 3, 4, 1, 2. As I said, 2 is a really solid sequel season. It's like the Empire Strikes Back of Stranger Things. And I think if you took away that really bad episode 7, then it would probably be even better. But generally speaking, I'm pretty satisfied. I mean, if I'm saying that's the weakest season, then the standard is still pretty high with it. So that would be my order.
Yeah, we do not talk about episode 7, which is a real pity because I'm always here for more Indian characters. I mean, we're the second largest population on the earth. We're literally everywhere, and you almost never see us in TV. So I'm
Yeah.
always here for more Indian characters, but not when they're badly written characters. So yeah.
Oh,
Um,
that's another thing, and which we don't necessarily have to. We could talk about that after season 5, but there's going to be spin-offs apparently.
yeah, I heard that. Yeah. That
It's
could be interesting. We'll see.
yeah, the speculation on what the spin-offs could be, because is it? I don't know. It depends how they do it, but from the main cast, is it really worth any of them having a spin? Because they've had sort of arcs on the show. It would have to be something a bit different.
Your favourite could get her own spin-off, Miss
Right.
Erica Sinclair.
That's true. That's true.
Because she's a well-known character, but she's not a main character, so she could easily be spun off into her own show because she already knows all of this stuff. So I'd say that's probably one of your stronger contenders, would be that Erica would be a main character, in which case I will not be watching, but it's good for you.
Yeah, but she grew on you this season.
She grew on me this
as a
season, but because there was
spin-off,
less
yeah.
of her. Because there was less of her. And she wasn't as obnoxious this season, which was a nice change. She was just too obnoxious in season 3. Like,
She was
dial it down.
entertaining.
Dial it down,
The
lady.
dialogue was fantastic. But yeah, no, I just wondered because you just mentioned about that, because obviously we speculated that was maybe a planned sort of spin-off, initially. Like
Yes, it definitely felt like a backdoor pilot, that episode, and not a good one. I mean, backdoor pilots are never great. Like, they always disrupt the flow of things, but that one was particularly jarring, I think. It was just a really weird, out-of-character episode, and it was just so bizarre. So yeah, we don't talk about episode 7. It's just not a great episode.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I can't get past the perfection of season 1. I mean, it had such a nostalgic feel without feeling like it was being shoved down our throats, like in season 3 when they decided to vomit the 80s everywhere. That was just like, I don't even know what happened there. But season 1 to me felt like watching like E.T. or The Goonies or Stand By Me. It felt like those 80s movies, and it felt so warm and comforting, and it was just such a great season. And it just really could have worked just by itself, and I think it's just such a great story, and I think the characters are great. Now, what has always kept me watching are the characters. I've always kept coming back to the characters on this show, and I think they do a great job with them. And obviously, if we didn't have more than one season, we wouldn't get, like you said, those great characters. But part of me still wishes that this had just been a one-season show, because season 1 was just so perfect. It was just so good. And I do feel that season 2 and particularly season 3 dragged the show down a bit. So if we just stayed with the perfection of season 1, it would have been amazing.
Yeah, but maybe not as interesting. I think that's the thing. You might not have had the emotional highs, along, and the sense of a journey. Because it's a sci-fi show and because it's a coming-of-age show, I don't know. In the back of my mind, I might have, because it was so short that first season, like 8 episodes. I mean, I get it tells a perfect story in many ways, but I don't know. I sort of feel maybe I would have been left wanting more. But
okay, fair enough. I think. Yeah, no, sorry, you go.
No, it's always hard to tell, like retrospectively, because obviously, if the other season hadn't have happened, it would be a very different conversation. So it's always, yeah.
I think because for me, seasons 2 and 3 were not up to par, it kind of lessened it. And that's why I was always so very much like, it should only be one season. But now that season 4 has been so good, I'm glad that it kept going so that I could get this amazing season. But yeah, I think because seasons 2 and 3 dropped in quality for me personally, I kind of got into that whole, it should have just ended at season 1. But now I'm a bit more kind of like, no. I'm glad that it's gone on now because I got a great season in season 4, and hopefully season 5 will be really good. But there is just something about the sheer effect of the first season and how everything plays out and how it's all connected and it all comes together so perfectly in the end that I just don't think any of the seasons are going to beat that first one, which was just, and it was something
Okay.
so new as well. It was something
Yeah.
that it kind of kickstarted the whole 80s nostalgia that's been going on since then. And it's like we've talked about, it was Netflix's first like big event
Yeah,
show,
yeah.
like their big, it kind of catapulted Netflix into being a production company, not just a streaming service. And
Yeah.
I mean, we're just so grateful that this show happened in the first place, and now it's like given us so many talking points and stuff. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what season
Yeah,
5 brings.
obviously it's good for people like us.
Yeah.
Lots of content, but
Yeah.
because like Netflix was originally it was a mail order thing, wasn't it? So it's
I think so. We
funny.
didn't even have it here in Australia until I think 2015 is when it, like, or 2014 or 2015 is when it became available here. So I think originally it was like an order thing. You could just order movies from it and stuff like that, and then slowly it became more of a streaming service. And then now it is what it is now. So
makes sense. Yeah.
same.
Okay. So we've had a good discussion. Yeah. Lots to talk about once
Just
again.
remember that Keith's opinions are wrong, and season 3 sucks.
No, so you should applaud me for having an unpopular opinion.
I do.
I know
I'm always there for people with unpopular, because I have so many myself.
Because off air, I jumped her than Veronica Mars season 3 is my
That's
favourite.
true.
So that's another.
Bold of you to admit that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe. Rachel, if you want to promote your channel quickly.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel McDonald, video essays covering movies and TV shows with all the correct opinions about them. My Tumblr and my Twitter are linked through my YouTube. And Keith is usually lovely enough to put a link in the description, so come follow me everywhere.
I might not after that comment. I mean, that was
Our friendship is on thin ice at the moment.
Yeah.
Skating on thin ice.
I should actually say then now we're up to date on Stranger Things. Of course, we will come back for the final season next. Well, whenever it is, we don't know.
Whatever
it
may
could
be
at least an hour and a half, a year and a half, maybe at least. So, but whenever it is, I mean, possibly early 2023. No, because that's next year.
2024.
It could be late 2023 or early 20. Yeah. So you're looking, but obviously we will do the final season when it comes. But just to promote, we will be covering Buffy as our next show. We're going to do.
That's going to be fun. You think we're arguing now? Wait until we do Buffy.
We'll be at each other's throats.
This may be the end of mine and Keith's friendship.
So we're going to do some season-long sort of videos of each season of Buffy. So that's coming in the coming weeks on the channel. So thanks for listening. Take care. Season 3 is the best. See you later.